1276, Empires of the Middle Ages. I was away for a while on a business trip, so I wasn't really, we had a long break there. Anyway, not much has actually changed. Poland expanded, grabbing Lithuania finally. They were debating an invasion to grab the Balkans territories from the Byzantines that they wanted. The English managed to get a diplomatic conquest of Wales. They're trying to collect up claims or ties to everything in the English Isles. They have a dynastic inheritance card that'll help them there. The Germans actually did something kind of cool. They had a good war leader and ended up raiding Lombardy because their cash situation is so crappy. But now you can see they have a particularly crappy war leader, so they can go back to trying to improve their economy. They have one area that's positive. Really, the economy across the board is crap for everyone. France has Normandy and Anjou. The English only have Wessex. The Swedes aren't very big at all. Germany only has Bavaria. The Italians were doing pretty well, and still kind of are comparatively, but Lombardy got dropped through the raiding. The Byzantines only have Constantinople, and the Poles, of course, are very wealthy, actually. Now, what I mean by that, by only have, those are the only income-producing provinces they own out of all of what they have. Because it's 1276, I believe the Mongols stopped showing up, and that's really good news for the Poles. And I'm going to start invoking whatever my special rules, and I haven't come to a combination of memory and decision on what they're going to be regarding the Turks. We have a magnate in Syria. That's how I trigger these, but there are no player slots open, so the Turks may not be possible until somebody gets wiped out, which might make having Germany try to wipe out the Swedes or the English become more attractive to them as a way to drive the Byzantines down into much worse shape. 1281, and we're seeing a little bit of interesting movement. Well, the Italians improved Lombardy back. They're becoming one of the richer, little compact. They're very compact, and they've got a lot of money where they are. Kind of how Poland was before they expanded massively. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a stab for greater power, especially against the French, from Italy at some point. Right now they've got the largest wealth in the game. Of course, France is up there. I'm not sure it's actually the largest. The Poles may have more. I keep forgetting about them because they're off on this side. But yeah, it feels like they're in the second best position in terms of solid economy and a good stock of money. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, they also have the missionary fervor card, which makes them kind of want to take Sicily and convert it to Catholicism. That might be a more acceptable thing, and they can also take Corsica probably without it. I really doubt the Byzantines are going to be dealing with that much. And one of the reasons why is the Poles invaded Bulgaria. The Byzantines have problems with this magnate, who's still there, and really don't have a lot going for them right now. The other attack that happened was the Swedes attacked into Friesland. Now, they're not economically that potent, but I think what they're hoping for is to get support from a number of people who might want to carve up Germany. It's not in great shape right now. It's got a really, really crappy military leader and not a lot of money. So it might be time to knock Germany out of the game. Friesland might not have been the best choice, but they can hit it from Denmark, so it was an easy choice. Seems like Norway would have been a wiser one if they weren't going to start trying to basically just destroy Germany. Alright, 1286. The English played that dynastic inheritance card. Now they have claim to just about everything, well, to everything in England, even if they don't own Ireland, which they tried to conquer and failed, or Scotland, which is still German. The Germans tried to retake Friesland and ended up spending all their money on that attack. They didn't have much, but they have none now. And then the Swedes came back and tried to attack into Lorraine and made a failure there, and I think they got a much worse leader. And then they turned against Norway and failed there, and they're in kind of more questionable shape. France followed up by taking Burgundy because the Germans are weakened, and the Italians improved Lombardy up to +3. Byzantines retook Asia, and probably the most exciting thing on the turn, the Poles, who were poised with their good leader, still have him, and considering going into the Balkans in force, well, they drew an outbreak of heresy, so they let the heretics have all of the Balkans coming out of Bulgaria, and so that further weakens the Byzantines' hold. Of course, it makes connecting up to Macedonia next to impossible unless they want to fight their way through them. They may. It's just the missionary fervor cards are kind of more, it's in Italy's hands. So Italy may start converting Balkan territories into Catholic ones. That's cheaper overall than converting Sicily. And then they went and ruled, and they got Smolensk up to a +2 and put a fortification there. 1291, none of Al-Ada has changed. We got another magnate show up coming out of Syria, starting to attack the Byzantines. And the English leader died heirless, lost Ireland, and started setting up to rule that again. There's still a war going on between the Swedes and the Germans. It's very, very low intensity, though. The Italians grabbed Sicily, and they're going to begin a conversion attempt on that. Basically, that seemed the better route to go than through Croatia, just because it's more valuable to them once they get it. 1296, most exciting thing that happened, about the only exciting thing that happened. German leader died heirless. I did a color swap. The French are now green because they need that extra counter mix. That's been clear for a while. And that the Germans could afford it, but it just was made more obvious by this. So that means the Swedish gains are pretty much going to be held. And the Germans still hold Scotland. Still got a magnate. Started raiding Constantinople, which is bad news for the Byzantines. They're not able to conquer it, but if they can drop its value down, the Byzantines get no income anymore. And that would be very, very dangerous. That's about it. The Italians continued, really started their conversion. They're 2/3 of the way done because of that excellent card, the Missionary Fervor. Oh no, this is an Orthodox area. They need like 5 total. You think? I don't know. Yeah, they need 5 total, so they got a long ways to go actually. But they did really want Sicily. They'll move into the Balkans later, I guess. 1301, a few interesting things actually happened. Let's see. So the Germans and the Swedes continued fighting. The Germans actually initiated this time, taking back Friesland and actually getting claim to it. The Italians managed to convert Sicily and now have claim to it. The Swedes made an attempt on getting diplomacy on Scotland, which kind of galvanized. There was a leader dies heirless on the Germans at some point. May have been this turn. They have a pretty good leader, so it's quite possible. So they lost Scotland, and that created a vacuum. The Swedes went in diplomatically. The English decided, hey, if I want Scotland, I better grab it now, otherwise it's going to be harder later. The Poles, they also died heirless, and they lost Muscovy. They lost Macedonia, which they couldn't hold anyhow. And a lot of their areas went into unrest. They ended up with a young ruler who was a 2-1-2 initially, but after one round, they end up at a 5-5-3, which is pretty good. The Byzantines used a dynastic inheritance to regain Asia through what I kind of see as the nobles revolted and gave it back to them. They still have to cope with this magnate, and he's gotten stronger, so it's kind of a problem. But at least Constantinople isn't ready to fall right now. He had begun fighting, and actually, before the Byzantines went on his own turn, he had gotten it because of his new level and because of raiding. He'd gotten Constantinople low enough to get actual conquest attempts, and had actually gotten one success and reduced the value. Right now, in the victory situation, what's very important is these values that are unreadable. The Byzantines have 35 points right now. The Poles still have 25. Germany has 10. France 25. Italy 20. What that means is that right now Poland and France are far and away leading the game from the points as well as board presence. They both have huge empires. So people are going to have to start taking that into account and consider how to hurt them. Germany's been stripped. Italy, if it gains too much, will be playing with the big boys. So right now, people like Sweden, England, Germany, maybe to a lesser extent Italy, although they're the most capable of the pile, should be considering, can we deal and take down one of these leader players? If you can strip them of their home areas, there's a good chance the empire will collapse. So that's something people have to consider. The problem is Poland is really hard to take. We might be looking at two-player alliances to take these guys out, or else an everybody alliance to take France out. But once that happens, it kind of opens you up and gets you tied into it. So the possibility of England and Italy taking France out and Germany and Sweden taking Poland out is what I'm kind of looking at and what's kind of coalescing in my mind. The Byzantines can't do a lot. They're just so hosed right now. 1306, and interesting things definitely are happening. I was discussing on the last segment or moment the possibility of coalitions to try to bring down the Poles and the French, and that actually happened. And it started out, I think, with the English attacking in Normandy. They ended up doing some raiding. They also tried to attack. They didn't get very far, but they got some money. That's about it. Also against the French, well, the Swedes attacked the Poles in a similar sort of manner, not really able to get a good grasp on them, because as long as your opponent has cards, it's tough to enforce things, and then raiding ends up just getting you gold and reducing their standing a little bit, so they can still hold cards against the other opponent. Since nobody has a lot of money except the Italians out of this whole group, and they weren't giving money to anyone, that didn't work very well. But on the Italian phase, they had some problems. First of all, during their taxation, they ended up losing Rome, which sucks. But they did conquer Burgundy, which puts them in a position to reach the French underbelly. They have more money than France by a little bit. So it should be possible to take France out of the game. The problem is the Poles, well, not out of the game necessarily, but off the board, at least temporarily. And that can be very painful, and they could end up falling completely. The Poles, going next, said, you know, I'm not going to deal with these Swedes anymore. And this is something the French considered against the English. And they swept in and took every single homeland country of the Swedes, knocked them off the map. Now they're seeking refuge in Venice. But this puts them in a situation where that enemy's out of the way. And like I said, the Poles were going to be the harder of the group to go. Germany, choosing, although Poland was out of cards, they just didn't have enough money to take Poland out. So they chose to gang up on France as well, especially since Sweden's out of the battle. And they managed to take Champagne, and then they ran out of money, more or less. So they started raiding Silesia and Bohemia, neither of which is really helping, and it may just be pissing the Poles off enough to come in after the Germans. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, overall, it's not going very well. The Magnate went forward back into Asia, and is again in a position to start pestering Constantinople. 1311. This video is getting long. I'm gonna cut it at the end of this one, but more exciting stuff happened. Now, as we remember, the Swedes were gone, and they were unable to get themselves back into place using diplomacy. The French held all their cards. The English did not attack, instead ruling some of their territories, trying to get them into better shape. The French didn't actually attack. They held their cards, though, so they didn't roll or anything. Put it into, I believe, the Poles next. Now, the Poles were very fearful of the alliance that was forming. So they decided they would just hit Germany preemptively. Germany had been raiding anyway. And they managed to grab both Franconia and Bavaria there. But the Germans took those back, although they have no money. Still a good ruler. Poles got a new ruler. Or no, they had the same one, 335. That's not bad. They did waste all their money. That's what happened. Yeah, they spent all their money attacking the Germans. So now things are kind of interesting. They have a better economic base than the Germans do. But it's more of a close fight between two empires. Overall size doesn't matter much. That's just worth victory points, really. What matters is what you have that's of worth, which is also worth victory points. But if you can't tax it, it doesn't help you too much. Of course, you can plunder your territories. I almost never do that, but at this point in the game, some people might be thinking it. Now, because the French held all their cards and the Germans were busy with the Poles, the Italians chose not to attack. Instead, they used their good leader, a 552, to up the social state in their areas and to regain Rome as well. They also grabbed claim to Burgundy, which they're probably going to hold. I don't see a lot of offensive action happening in the near future. Alright, I'm going to wrap this one because I've used up like 15 minutes.